We have an article here in the Gleaner written by Peter S. Pute. Wake up! Jamaica is at a turning point. Which is very much true. Some parts of the article here. Even before I began to write this column over 30 years ago, political corruption has been the main obstacle to Jamaica's national progress. Oh yes. State resources were poured, are still being poured, into housing projects which created political garrisons. People with activists and thugs who guaranteed electoral success. Armed gangs with political connections control turf and make millions from extortion, drug dealing, and gun running. The security forces seem unable to arrest, never mind convict, even mid-level political operatives involved in this national evil. We know this kind of thing has been going on for a long time, and it continues. Now, a major drag. Crime and corruption are a major drag on our national economy. Economic growth over the last half a century has been anemic. Surely we should be seeing greater dividends by now from the billions our government have borrowed since independence, making us one of the most highly indebted countries in the globe. Well, we have to consider, what do they do with the money that they borrow? Well, they borrow it to run with it, to carry out all sorts of projects when election is near, in order to buy vote, because it's a form of vote buying, right? One form of vote buying is to wrap the money into green or orange t-shirts where they're going to have political campaigns, loading buses to go to the national arena. Another one, of course, is to award persons or to bribe persons into voting by giving cows, goats, pigs, fertilizer, zinc, barrel, board, lumber for buildings, and so on and so forth, and to carry out infrastructure projects in certain communities, right? Trying to buy the vote, and doing so conveniently near to the election date. Oh my gosh. Dispute continues. Over the decades, progress with reducing political corruption has been slow but significant. The days of stolen ballot boxes stuffed with marked ballots from the night before, and victorious candidates obtaining 106% of the votes in their constituencies are now over, thanks to the establishment of a largely independent electoral commission. Well, not just that, but you know that we have the technology to catch them. We have cameras, whether there be surveillance cameras or cell phone cameras or some other cameras. That's part of the reason why we have this reduction in incidents of suspected ballot boxes being emptied or being stuffed with ballots, right? Electoral fraud still takes place. Politicians of both the green and the orange variety buy the alliance. They buy the alliance of voters, even though largest in and out of political garrisons or directly through cash payments. Jamaica's private sector cooperates by providing the parties with funds. Yes, that's one of the things they do. When I have my company, if I were a corrupt businessman and I have my company and I donate to your political campaign, when you win, you know that I will be getting all sorts of government contracts, right? Because of your influence, and I can reward you after I get paid by giving you back some of that money. That's what they do. That's the way they do some of these things. Corruption. And we saw in other articles that 6 parliamentarians are now being investigated for illicit enrichment. Corruption, corruption, corruption. I said it at the time and I will say it now. He continues. The creation of the Integrity Commission was a backward step which reduced transparency and accountability. Bribery, graft, and corruption are now harder to detect. Now, here's something else. The commission is gagged from disclosing who is being investigated, which prevents persons with information from coming forward. Right? So if I personally suspect that a particular politician is receiving illicit enrichment, but I'm not sure, I have some doubts, and I hear that politicians are being investigated, I'm not necessarily going to come forward and name anybody. But if I hear the name of that particular politician, then I'm much more likely to come forward. So you see, these persons, these government officials are protecting themselves from scrutiny. That's what they're really doing. Right? The crisis in which Jamaica presently finds itself is that the same people the Integrity Commission investigate for corruption are the same people who have the power to silence it. And in fact, have silenced the Integrity Commission. Now, this part is quite interesting. Last week, in an unprecedented move, the Speaker of the House declined to table the annual report of the Integrity Commission in Parliament, which would make the findings public. But guess what now? Guess what happened? Under pressure, she reversed herself and did so this week. The report called no names, but revealed that 6 of the country's parliamentarians are being investigated for illicit enrichment, and 7 parliamentarians are being probed for providing false information to the Integrity Commission in relation to their statutory declarations. These are all criminal offenses. The question is whether any of the dozen or so politicians under investigations are members of the Joint Select Committee reviewing the integrity registration, and whether any of the neutering recommendations have been made by those under investigation. So somebody there can be under investigation, and they have the power and exercise the power to to hide their identity. We don't know if this is so because the politicians, in writing the integrity legislation, in writing the integrity legislation, have gagged the Integrity Commission from revealing their names. This, of course, is a serious matter and amounts to a national crisis. If parliamentarians are allowed to reverse the small anti-corruption gains made over the last few years by neutering the Integrity Commission, then it is likely that corrupt politicians will escape prosecution. And corruption will become even more widespread. I call on the private sector, civil society, the church, all well-thinking Jamaicans to demand that the names of the politicians on the investigation be called so that any profound conflict of interest can be revealed. And not only that, so that persons who know something, who suspect something about a particular politician, will be encouraged to come forward and reveal such information when those politicians' names are called. Should any of those on the investigation be members of a joint select committee reviewing the legislation, the integrity legislation, they should be removed forthwith, and any and all of their interventions before the committee be expunged. The review of the integrity legislation must be placed in the hands of civil society and the church. Only then is it likely that the integrity legislation will be strengthened. Peter Espute is a sociologist and development scientist. All right, so there we have it. Exposing the corruption of the Jamaican parliamentarian system. Now, the fact that Peter Espute wrote this in the Gleaner, which is one of the traditional media houses, means that he still has to be careful in what he says. There is some limitations to what he can say, right? Because this is a member of the traditional media. So there may be a lot of things that he had to say, but cannot say it. But anyway, what he said here, he said it well. He gives his own opinion, which are valid, very good, and some facts which we know about, right? In fact, probably he himself knows one or two names, but dare not say it because the law that these politicians have created would come after him. They would be able to sue him using the same law that they created, that they formed to protect themselves. And the fact is, when we have persons out here looking on at such corruption, then in their minds, what moral obligations do they have for being honest themselves? When children in school, young people recently graduated, persons in college, universities, maybe just entering the workforce, they look at this. We're telling them to be honest, but they look at what these politicians are doing and the system that they set for themselves. It's no wonder why we have so much scamming and fraud in the society. They have no example to go off. They're not looking on and see persons who are honest and prospering. Right? They are seeing persons who are supposed to be role models to younger people being, on the face of it, dishonest and corrupt. Where is what message is being sent to those people? Anyway, I'll see you next time.